So before I create our new page or first page, that is the search page, I want to show you the main.dart file because it is actually a counter app that comes with every new Flutter project. We have a counter app, and I just deleted few of the codes from that counter app, and I just kept some of them. Like in the main function, we have a run app function, and inside the run app function, we have a my app widget. And this widget is actually the root of our widget tree. And if you want to see the widget tree, you should go to the Flutter Inspector tab here, and your app should be running. And now you can see the widget tree here. So at the top of widget tree, we have a my app, and inside the my app, we have the material app, and then we have a scaffold and nothing else. So as we advance with our course and add more widgets, so our widget tree will be populating with more widgets, and you can see that in the widget tree. So inside this my app stateless widget, we have a build method, and we are returning a material app widget, which is a material widget that follows the Google material design guideline. And I have used a primary color or primary swatch of light green, and the brightness is I'm using the dark brightness, and that's why when I run this application, we are seeing a dark background screen instead of white, because scaffold has a by default white screen, and we are seeing this dark screen because of this brightness, dark brightness. So now I don't want to assign a scaffold directly to the material app home argument. I want to create a new page, and to create a new page, I'm going to the pages directory here, and inside this pages directory, I will create a new Dart file, and the name should be search page, and this will be a stateful widget. To create a stateful widget from scratch, just type st, and you will be prompted with some options. Just select st full, click enter, and Android Studio will auto generate some codes for you. So the class name should be search page, and you have to import the material.dart file. So anywhere you put your cursor and press alt enter and import material.dart. And instead of passing a scaffold in the material app home, now I will pass this search page. Now if I run this application once again, this search page, since this search page is the home of this material app, so this will be launched at the very first time, and now this page is our launcher page. So whatever widget you pass at the home of material app, that will be the home page. So let's go inside the search page, and inside this build function in the state object, I will return a scaffold instead, because whenever we want to create a new page, we start with a scaffold, because scaffold provides us a white screen and provides us with lot more material widgets like app bar, navigation drawer, bottom navigation bar, menu bar, etc. So I want to have an app bar, so I am taking an app bar inside a scaffold as first argument, and inside the app bar I want a title of a text widget that will say search, and I can mark this text widget as constant because this text is not going to change over time. So this is some kind of constant text. So I am putting a const keyword against this text widget, and then I'm going to give a body for this scaffold, and I will start with a form widget. A form is a special type of widget that handles the user form data and handles the validations also. A from widget needs a child widget also, and I am passing a center widget as the child of from widget. And as the child of center, I will pass a list view. I'm taking a list view because um, in the landscape mode, if user rotate this phone to the landscape mode, widgets may overflow in the screen. So I am taking a list view here so that we have a scroller automatically, because if I have used column instead of list view, you know that column doesn't come with a default scroller. So I want this list view to have some padding, and I'm passing some paddings constant, all 8, and the children of this list view will be a drop down list. I want to show you the diagram that I have shown you previously. So this will be the search page. Our search page will look like this. So inside our search page, we'll have a drop down button. In fact, 2 drop down buttons to select the start and end destinations. We will have a button and a text widget side by side. By pressing this button, user will be able to select the departure date and a search button that will lead user to the very next page. And all these stuffs, all these widgets will be at the center of this screen. So to achieve that formation, I have used the center widget, but if I take the drop down button or any other widget for testing, so I have just took a text widget which says hello world, and if I rerun this application, perhaps you will see this text widget at the top of the screen. Yes, at the top, but at the top left corner of the screen, but I want it here at the center, because list view has a nature that it takes all the height and all the width by default. So I can actually use this shrink wrap argument to let list view to wrap its height with its children. So if I now press hot to reload, you will see the text widget is at the center vertically. To place this at the center horizontally, we have another option. We can either wrap this text widget inside a center, or we can place or gives an argument text align at center. So we don't want this text widget. We want a drop down button. So I'm taking a drop down button. So we have drop down button, 2 types of drop down button. One, a plain drop down button, and another one is a drop down button from field. Since we're using a from widget that will handle the validations also, so we will take the drop down button from field widget. And this type of widget that ends with from field provides us with a validator function. So drop down button from field, at the constructor we have to pass 2 arguments, mandatory arguments. First of all, let me just align the codes by pressing Control Alt and L. So let me start with this onChanged function first. So onChanged is a function that gives us a dynamic value. The value should be the type of the items that will be shown inside this drop down button, and I should specify the type here. So the type will be string, because all the city names will be string. And now onChanged function is a function that will provide us with a value with a string at the parameter. So this is the value, and this is the body of this onChanged function. And whenever user actually pick one of the cities, this function will be called, and the city that he selected will be given here. And now we can do whatever we want to do with this value, maybe put it somewhere else. So Now the items actually a list. So we have to pass a list here, and the items will be of type drop down menu item. But we will not provide a list like this. We will generate or populate this list dynamically. And we have a list of cities inside our constant.dart file, and we will use this list right now. So there are approximately 7 cities in this list. So there will be 7 items inside this list, and all the items will be a drop down menu item. To do that, just call the cities collection, then call the map function. Maybe I need to import the cities or constant.dart file, and then call the map function. And this actually is the city, and we need to return the drop down menu item. So drop down menu item, we need to specify the item type and a constructor, and lastly we need to combine all the drop down menu item to a list, because this item needs a list. So I'm calling the toList function at the last. So the drop down menu item constructor, we need to pass a child maybe, and the child will be a text, and we want to show the city name in the text widget. We have to also specify a value for this drop down menu item, and the value will be simply the city, this data type. So that's all for the drop down menu item items argument. And besides this items and onChange function, we actually can provide some more arguments, like we can provide a hint, and the hint argument takes a widget, and we can pass a constant text widget saying from. That means it will hint our user to select a city, a from destination. We can also set is expanded to true. That means our drop down button from field will expand its width throughout the screen. And also we can actually provide okay, don't need to provide anything else yet, but okay, we need to provide a decoration for the drop down button form field error text style, because whenever we want to show some error messages, the text style by default is black, but that will be very difficult to identify in the black screen. So I need to change the text style of the error text. So I need to provide an input decoration here, input decoration, and inside this input decoration I will provide an error style that will be a const text style, and the color should be white. Last thing I want to provide as the constructor of the drop down button from field is the validator function. So validator function is only available with the widgets that ends with from field. So validator function is it will provide a value, and that value is the value of this drop down button from field, and this is nullable. And if you look carefully, that validator function actually returns either a string or a null value, and whatever value it provides is also null. So we need to check whether this value is null or not. That means whether user actually selected any item from this drop down button from field. To do that, I just want to check that if value is equals null, or at the same time I want to check if this value is empty. So if the value is null or if the value is empty, then I will return some error message text, and that should be empty field error message that is coming from the constant.dirt, and the message is this field must not be empty. And if this condition is false, then it will return null. So in this case, this function returning null means everything is fine, user has provided or selected any of the items. And if this function returns anything rather than null, like a string, that means something is wrong or user did not select any item from this drop down button from field. So if I now press hot reload button, we will able to see this drop down button from field just like this. And if I click this item, before I click this item, it says from, and this is coming from this hint. And whenever I select this drop down button, we'll be able to see all the cities inside the cities list, and I can actually select any of the cities, and whatever city I select, that will be the value of this drop down button from field. We need to specify a few more arguments in the drop down button from field, like the value. So what should be the value of this drop down button from field? To do that, we need to specify a few other variables inside the state object. So I am declaring two strings, nullable strings at the same time. That will be a from city and to city. So I am declaring two string variables which are nullable, a from city and to city, and I will also declare a date time object, a nullable date time object that will be a departure date. So now I'll assign this from city to this drop down button from field value. So this will be from city, and whenever user actually selects one of the cities, you know that this onChanged function will be called and the value will be returned. And what do you want to do with this value? We can simply we'll simply click set states maybe, and or we can simply set the value from city to the from city. That means whatever value we get from this onChanged function, we setting this value to the from city. So if I now rerun the application, let's check whether everything is working fine. So this is the from drop down button from field. I'm randomly selecting any city, and now we can see that the city has been selected, and now the value of this drop down button from field is from city. So we need actually true drop down button from fields. To do that, I am simply copying this drop down button from field by selecting the whole widget here by pressing Ctrl W twice, and then copy and then paste. And I need to change few things. That means the value for the second drop down button from field will be to city, and the hint text should be to, and the value will be assigned to city. And if I press hot reload, you'll be able to see two drop down buttons, and I want some spaces between these two drop down button. And in Flutter, whenever we want to give some space, we use the sized box widget. So between these two drop down button, I am placing a constant sized box with a fixed height, say 10 pixel. So now you can see that there is a 10 pixel space between these two drop down button from field.